on that note, I want to introduce our next speaker. And, for me, I'm somebody that has been very fortunate to spend a lot of time around Curt. Curt's been, somebody that's been a successful, started as a very successful player, winning Man Cup, Champions Cup, long-time NLL career, and then, parlayed, that right into his coaching career. And I know he's been coaching a long time, starting in the minor, and, won some Minto Cups, and most recently, the NLL championship with Calgary. So we're very fortunate to have Curt here to share, his information, or his well, I guess I would say his passion about the sport and his knowledge. I don't think there's anybody that's doing it any better. So I'm going to step aside and turn it over to Curt. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, I know Curt is a big, proponent of asking your questions. He's happy to answer them. So use the chat feature, and without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Mouse.
Thanks, Brucey. Thanks for having me. I'll get started here. I don't have much of a PowerPoint presentation. Like, if anyone knows me, this is me, man. Like 7 pages of notes. So if my bulbs aren't right on the screen, they'll be off to the side because I'm kind of reading through my notes. And if I have to put my glasses on, then you guys got till about midnight tonight to gum me. Otherwise, it's cut off. So get your shots in while you can. But I'll try to wing it without it. So
can I get first in line if we're going to be gumming anybody?
You already got yours in last week, Sugar Beaks, right? So
I'll get out of the way.
Anyhow, I'll try to keep it. I'll try to keep it through the notes and not to be too much reading. But again, if I need to get to the whiteboard, there's some questions. I'll try to dance on my feet and answer them best I can. If there's any drills I got to put up, so I got the whiteboard over my shoulder. I just want to say thanks for having me out. It's exciting to be here. I got a great lineup of presenters, and I got to work with Brucey in Calgary exclusively, so him and I are good friends, and always glad to get back to the BCLA and the CLA. And I know Russ has done a really good job. I've actually been on all of them so far, so I think it's anytime we can share the knowledge. And I think Johnny Lovell taught me to try not to be try not to hide your stuff as much. I've gotten better. I wouldn't say I'm going to open my book completely up today, but I'll try to give you some stuff to everybody and just pass along the knowledge. But I just a couple things. I've been coaching. I've been around the game for 47 years. I've coached anywhere. We call it Shooting Stars, which we started a program in the Ridge here a couple of years prior to Mini Tyke. So we've been doing that for a while, and we got some great guys, and Brad Rennie and Mike Kilby that are down there doing that and carrying on the tradition in the Ridge. So I've been coached since I've been doing that at a young age, and then all of a sudden now I'm up to the NLL. So I've coached everywhere in between as well. So had the fortunate, been on some great teams and won some championships and coached some championships. And, I guess this is an opportunity for me to kind of give some shout outs. I'm a huge, pay it forward and respect of the game. And, you always pay respects to the people that came before you and taught you their life lessons and the lessons of the game. So I just got some names that I wrote down, and I have an opportunity on a forum to thank them. When you get an opportunity in other places and you don't have the chance, and you don't want to miss people. So if I miss a couple guys, I just want to, and it parlays all into it. I'm all over the map here. It'll make sense once I mention it. But one of my first coaches, Jack McGilvery, and Les Wingrove, Eddie Como's a huge one, and Bobby McMahon. I can't spend enough time talking about how I feel about Bobby McMahon, and Brady Bannister giving me opportunity, and the late Terry Sanderson and the late Les Bartley, and Troy Cordingley taught me a ton when I was a player, and Billy Monroe. We all know Billy Monroe out west and on the island there. Pimmer too. Pimmer taught me a lot of different things, how to operate with the media and how to motivate guys and the X's and O's. And Roddy Jensen is another one that I have a dear heart for, and Bobby J, Bobby Johnson, and Dr. Dave Locke, Jack Crosby, and Rainbow Spagnolo. So those are some of the guys that I just want to touch on. And the reason I mention them is that I learned a lot from each guy, and that's how you kind of build your coaching philosophy and your identity of who you are as a coach, and your style is based off of guys like that. You steal, you borrow, you learn from them. And, I wouldn't be in this position to have an opportunity to speak to everybody here today if I didn't have some great mentors and some great guys. And, I could get onto the players that I played with, because, a ton of those guys have given me a ton of knowledge as a player that you bring forward too. So I just want to touch base on them and thank them and show my respect to them. And so I'll get on to, I think it's important that you kind of know who I am. For most of you guys that are on the list, I see the list that's there. But for the people that don't know me, I'm just going to kind of go through my coaching philosophy. I wrote down some notes. So for me, I think the big thing is, you got to make sure you're being fair and you're being honest. And everyone has to trust you, and you got to respect the game, the coaches, the referees, the parents. I think that's very important, passing it along. And you know, I'm going to talk a lot about, like, when my topic came up about the 13 and over, it's not going to be so much junior in the NLL stuff. I know that I might throw a few things in there, but most of you seasoned guys will know everything I'm talking about. But I think I've kind of geared it a little bit towards the, you know, just the peewees and the bantams and the midgets and you know, we used to have intermediate here, but it was more for the minor system. I think that's important. That's where the grassroots, that's where the game grows. I think once you get to the pros and the juniors, you should have a pretty good handle of what you need to do, or you wouldn't be in those positions. So I'm going to be kind of giving my stuff more towards the minor stuff, the minor guys. Next point that I'd say is, you know, as part of my coaching philosophy is, you got to be prepared. You make sure you show up to the rink, to the field, wherever you're going, with a plan. You know, it's not fair to the kids. You don't cheat them when you get out there and you don't have the right things, you know, going on, and you're doing the same stuff, or you're showing up 5 minutes before. So big thing for me is preparation is super important. I think another point of my philosophy is just making sure everybody feels good about what they did that day. You know, Johnny Level taught me that. You want the kids going away feeling really good about, you know, how they feel and what they did that day. So that's another one that's super important. You want to make sure the kids are learning, the game's growing, and they're having fun. There's lots of ways you can be successful. Everyone knows I'm super competitive, and you know, you know, I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody. You know, I care about winning. It's important, but not at all costs. You know, it's, you know, you don't need to cheat or call goalie pads. I don't call any of that garbage, stick checks. I don't do that stuff. I'll warn the coach before the game and say you're cheating, like, and it'll be on him to fix it. But I don't call that stuff. It just straight up, and I figure just head to head and let the chips fall where they may. The other thing is the kids need to know that they can trust you, that you have their back on the field, on the floor, off the floor, in life in general. I think, you know, it's pretty awesome when you get to see all the kids come back and they say, hey coach, how you doing? Even the kids that you met at Cutting Junior, or you're trying to recognize them from years ago with all the conkies that I've had. You know, it's tough, but it's pretty neat. You know, you get to see them, and you know, and they just show that, you know, you built the trust with them, and however it ended, it was, you know, they cared about you and you cared about them. The other thing is, it's important with my philosophy is it's never personal. It's always situational. You're going to get mad at a situation on the floor, but it's never going to be a personal attack on any of the kids. It's always just a situational thing. You're upset. So I make sure all the kids know that. Not so much with the mini tykes and the novices. We'll probably get into it a little bit this year if we play, but you know, it's just important that they understand that it's Coach Curt's not mad at you. It's, you know, he's upset at the play that happened, but it's never on you. So it's important we mention that. I even mentioned that in my parent meetings too, so that the parents understand. I would have loved to answer the question about the $5 goal kid, but we'll leave that one for a different day. The other thing is, the other big philosophy of me is team first. I think that's the most important thing. Is it's always about the team. It's always about the front of the jersey. You know, us in the Ridge, maybe a little nugget for some of the COQ guys up the hill, that we always hang our jerseys in the stalls with a logo forward. We don't turn them around to the number or the name on the back. I know minors don't have that, but it's always logo first. And just so when they walk in the room and everybody knows that that's what you're playing for. And you know, I use my little isms and little things that I've picked up over the years to explain things. You know, the way I talk about the team cultures and building cultures and stuff like that is I use those little analogies even when I'm teaching my coaching things. So it's kind of like the kids can repetition remember, you know, one step forward costs you 10 back. You know, the little things contain demand before you peak, like little things like that, is that so kids not only can be like visual learners, that they can remember these little things in their mind, and you just keep trying to have the same verbiage and stuff like that. So I think those little things that I tie in with the team philosophies is super important, that the kids kind of understand that personal sacrifice for the betterment of the team. And we really talk about that with our even the young guys right out of the gate. We talk about being a family, and team is like a family, and family's like a team. That was our logo when our little banner when we go up to the Gene Andre tournament in mini types. So all that stuff is super important in my philosophy. I'm a big, you know, hard work wins, honest effort, honest results. There's no cheating. You know, you do it the right way. You know, even if someone sticks one in the net and it's the wrong way, you know, I'm going to make them go, you know, great effort, but that was the wrong play. You got a guy sitting on the crease, you cork on 5 holes. So I think keeping kids honest and accountable and explaining to them why and when and believing in what you believe in and never straying from it. That's another one of my big philosophies. You know, someone mentioned in the last session a little bit about the 2 and 3 kids. What do you do in the drills that they can't you know, come in your drills, or what are you going to do? And I like what Russ said, just about having that parent that can work on the passing and catching and stuff like that. That was a nice little nugget that people can take away. But for me, is my philosophy is, and again, I'm talking about the peewees, the bantams, you know, novices right up to the midgets, really, is coach from the bottom up. I think it's super important. We had a field lacrosse season this year with the U9s, and I had worked with Anthony Kalinich. He did a great job with our kids, and shout out to Cal. But he was working. I gave him kind of our elite kids, and they ran the line drills and stuff like that. And I took 3 kids, and I just worked on passing and catching and passing and catching. I was in tears by the end of the year how further they came along, and I would have loved to have some video on them. It would have been just outstanding. But I really pay attention to those young kids. The kids that might not be hit the expectations or developing a little bit slower than the other ones. And you're going to get them in the drills. They're going to learn fire by baptism kind of idea. But I think it's important that you don't let them go away and you cater to your top guys. That's nothing that I ever agree with in playing 10 kids, or everybody's got to feel a part of it. And I think that's my next point about my philosophy is making sure that no matter what the kids do and what their job is on the team, it's the most important thing. Like if your job is to get the ball up the floor as quick as you can, or your job is to play good defense or get the loose balls, or whatever it is, if it's a little thing, and it's got to be, you make sure the kids know it's one of the most important things out there, because then they go away and they feel really good about themselves when they come back. They're like, man, coach said that I came to the bench hard, mom. There's a young kid that I've been talking with. I can tell I never picked up a stick before in the ridge, and just to tell him, I can't believe how good you've come along since the first couple of weeks. And you can just see the look in the kid's face. And you can't have a coaching seminar to teach that. It's just like, that's what it's all about. So how I build that is just making sure that they understand whatever job, whatever contribution they have to the team, it's one of the most important things, and you can't go without it. And so you celebrate those little successes, you'll have a very successful program. And I think those are the things you can't really teach in this thing. But if I could pass it on to someone, you take that away, it really helps. The next thing is super important, and it's my last point here, is be a good teammate. I don't like, we're competitive, building on what Blaine was saying. We'll have all the little drills and fun things that we do and try to have someone to compete in there in games and stuff like that. But, I don't like our kids, laughing at a teammate or making fun of them, or if they will run, they win a 5-4 in a celebration and jumping around and embarrassing their teammates. I don't put up for that. I think if we can teach anything, and if I can teach anything I'm most proud of is that the kids are great teammates. And, that parlays into my next point is, you got to make sure having good teammates, you have good positive reinforcement. I talked about the situational stuff earlier, but I do think the positive reinforcement, and I really learned that in the pros. Like, sometimes I come hard on guys, and, you get, even at the pro level, it's really, really important. You have that positive reinforcement, and, everybody wants a pat on the head no matter how old they are. So that's something that I've kind of incorporated even at the pro level now. But I think that's super important. And that just ties into the last point, is good people make good teams. So it's, it's parents out there think that like they don't have like the $5 of the money. And then I don't know why it's in my head, because Brucey knows I'm totally anti against that stuff, and I don't want to go on a big spiel, but like, the parents play a role, like stuff like that. When if I hear something like that, or, the parents are bitching and complaining about certain things, that doesn't make your son a good teammate. And it does. And that's kids are product of their environments. And if you're spitting that poison and that toxicity at home, it doesn't help the kids at all when they get out there, and it only affects their play. And then you go looking at the next team, and I'm not going to lie to anyone, and that's why I think Brucey wants me honest. I'm going to be straight up and honest. Is you look at a list, and all of a sudden you got the parent that was given $5 goals, or was complaining about how the practice was, or how much Billy or Bobby's time was on the floor. That's going to impact your kids. So I think that stuff is super important. And I talk about that stuff at my parent meetings. I bring that stuff up, and it's straight up and honest. And I'll tell them, like, if you're going to come at me with anything, you better get your ducks in a row, especially if it's your theory stuff and technical lacrosse stuff. But no, anyway, that's just little things about being a good teammate and how important it is. So I'll go on to, I think when Bruce and I first started talking about what he wanted from me is been successful as a coach at the provincial level, national level, and I kind of have a plan of how I do things. I'm not an Excel spreadsheet guy. My PowerPoint I showed you before is pen and paper. I'm not going to have a sheet that's going to tell me we're going to start in March here and we're going to finish in our provincials to BC in July, which should be longer, by the way. But anyway, whenever we finish our provincials, I don't have a sheet saying, hey, we have to be doing this in March. We have to be doing this in April. because it's like anything, you just gotta evolve with your team and evolve with how things go along as you work through your teammates and your systems and what you want to do. So the one thing I do, and you know, I can kind of help people along, and I'm always open. Everyone knows that how to get a hold of me on my cell or whatnot. And I'd rather a phone call than a text or sorry, an email. I won't answer them very often outside of, hey, call me on my cell between 3 and 4. But, you know, for me, I work back from the provincials. Again, I think development is super important. If you don't develop, you don't have a good team atmosphere, you're not going to win, you know? So at the end of the day, all this stuff ties into having a good team. So when I talk about winning, I think that's kind of what you wanted me on here for, is to kind of show how you can be successful and how to be successful without compromising your ideologies and your coaching philosophies and all that stuff. So I always work back from the provincials. It's important that you know what you want to end up and what you need to do to get yourself in that position to be successful at the end of it. But you want to identify what tournaments that you want to go in. Like out west, we like to go over the island once, and we obviously try to get into the Trevor Wingrove tournament and stuff like that are super important. That I think they're good markers, but. You know, you get some of the coaches that'll want to play in every tournament. Like some of them are like 5. Like I talked to some coaches, oh, we're in 5 tournaments. I'm like, right on, buddy. We're going to wallpaper you in the provincials because you're going to be dead tired. So you got to remember, you know, less is more sometimes. You got to just make sure that you're finding that little sweet spot, that you're not doing too much and you're not burning your team out, and you're ramping up towards, you know, the national championships. And I think Paul Delmonte and the Salmon Bellies really taught me that stuff well. And I was around in Burnaby early, and when I was in New Westminster, like we never had the gym days in there. We slowly worked because we knew we were playing late into September or early September for the Man Cup, and you knew you were playing in the Minto Cup. And some of that stuff I learned when I was with Coquitlam and Burnaby. You slowly ramp yourself up. So again, that less is more philosophy is important, because you want to be your athletes peaking at the right time, which is for the minors is your provincial championships. So my next point is picking your team. You know, in the pros and in the junior A lacrosse, you can basically trade and draft and figure out what players you want for the systems that you want. Well, when you're in minor lacrosse, you know, especially if I talk about centers, that's the Ontario technology for teams or associations out here in BC. But you know, if you're picking your team and stuff like that, you only have a certain amount of kids to pick from. And you know, Ridge, we're lucky we got a big pool, but there's some other areas, you know, maybe your Missions or Chilliwack's where you don't. So it's super important to look what you have for your team, and then you design your systems and your philosophy based on your personnel, based on the kids that make your team. You can't walk in there and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to run a pressure defense, and you got big lugs that can't move up and down the floor. Or you're going to say, oh, I'm going to play a bit of a zone. I know you guys don't like the zone, but you know, I'll call it a matchup pressure defense if it makes everyone happier. But you know, you can't play a zone type defense if you have a bunch of small little guys. You know what I mean? So it's important as coaches that you can't have a cookie cutter system. You have to, especially at minor lacrosse, you have to develop your system predicated on your athletes and the kids you got. And as we all know, it's going to change from year to year. So you have to make sure that you're ready to be the adaptability and stuff as we go along. So that's super important. Okay, so then the next thing is that I'll go through is basically identifying the type of system that you want. And what I'm going to give you here about when I'm going to talk about the offense and I'm going to talk about the defense, and I'm basically just letting everybody know and I'll tie it all into the key points that what make a difference later in the presentation. But I'll talk a little bit about some of the things you need to decide what you want to do, and just giving people like what you want to do for offense, what you want to do for defense, what you should be thinking about when it comes to transition, and all the little things that we go along doing, and what we focus on with my minor teams to be successful. So we'll start this stuff in novice, believe it or not, maybe not to this level that I'm going to throw some stuff out, but there might be a few little things that you can pick up here. And where you probably won't see on the presentation is for me to have the time I'll throw buzzwords, I'll throw little things, and some guys that'll go right over their heads, or gals that'll go over their heads a little bit. So again, I don't mind reaching out and coming back to me and say, hey, what do you think? What do you think about this? You mentioned this in the presentation. I think, you know, I said earlier about all those great people that I got mentored by. You know, their biggest thing that I know take away from them is they gave it all back. So again, if something goes too quick here, I talk a lot fast, but if you're missing something, let me know, and you know, I'll find it a little bit better. So So this is basically from an offensive perspective. I'll just talk about the systems, and again, this is more for the midget Bantam kids. The Pee Wee kids, we got there. Fridgie and I coached together. We got to a lot of this stuff, and when I had the Pee Wees on my own, we did quite a bit of it. So I think from an offensive philosophy, I'll just give you some of this stuff. Is just having a hot ball, moving the feet, as everybody knows. On ball, off ball, swing the ball philosophy is important. It means you're going to attack on the ball first. If that's not there, you're going to look off the ball. And if that's not there, you're going to look swing the ball. But I kind of said it backwards, but it's more off ball first. You're looking off ball, then you're looking on ball, then you move the ball. And when I say swing the ball, it means you want to swing it from the left to the right. I think off ball, if you're going to play an off ball system, you got to make sure the ball's down low, which gets the defenders turning their head. And then you can carry it to the half boards. I know a lot of guys talk about the east-west offense, north-south offense, the old school stuff, but guys will buzzword it to death. Travis Green's a king of the buzzwords, but you get the east-west stuff that everyone's, it's east-west. You know what? There might be a value of some pick-repick on the north-south. So you got to decide what you want to run there from an offensive on-ball stuff. I always talk about, I like to give the kids tangible things, and so you have kind of like ideologies of what your offense is. It doesn't need to be all these points that I'm talking about. It just needs to be a couple little things that we post up in the dressing room as your key things that each game you want to kind of make sure that you're hitting on. And we say 2 to 3 swings or reverses per possession. When I say swing, I already said you kind of pass it through from the lefts to the rights or the rights to the lefts, but we talk about X, which is up in the middle of the floor, kind of would be the point of the power play or the top of the arc in basketball. You want to kind of swing it through X. And I talk about reversing the ball, which is when I say, my guys know, I say reverse the ball, means pass it behind the net or cycle through behind the net, which gets a defensive goaltender moving. You go from high to low, which is reversing up to the high swings at high X, which gets the defense flexing in and out, and you tire them out, and then you attack them late in the 30-second clock. We always talk about open guy being 2 passes away. That meaning that if Blaine was talking about the pick and rolls earlier, ball gets passed down low, you set a pick, the guy carries over top, swings it to the wrong side, and passes back to the side that it started on. So that's open guy is 2 passes away, meaning that the picker gets it from the off ball side, which gets the defense flexing out, and you kind of attack them on the off ball stuff. So that's an important little thing you can throw in. For the minor guys, and even with the Pee Wees, and when you're kind of how do you teach motion offense? It's not easy to do. There's no real cookie cutter for it. There's some patterns and stuff that you can run, but the 4-corner stuff I go to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think the big thing is as long as you're doing one of 3 things, either you're a passer, you're a picker, or a cutter. So, when the kids come off the floor and you say, hey, great job out there, Johnny. What did you do? What were you out there? Give me one of 3 things. And you'd be like, I wasn't a passer. I wasn't a picker. I kind of stood there. Coach, I didn't do anything. I said, well, come on, you got to, and you give them those 3 tangible things and they're easy. And that's part of motion offense. Either you're passing or you're setting a pick or you're cutting. So that's something that helps at the young ages of keeping some fluidity and some motion in your offense. So that's something that I have as a philosophy. And as you get a little bit older, you start talking about how you want to move the ball. Everyone's going to, move your feet, move the ball. But moving your feet, those passer, picker, cutter really helps, having something tangible. So the kids will move their feet instead of harping, run, move, run. And you're like, buddy, shut up, man. Give them something more. So for me, the other part is moving the ball is 2 to 3 seconds with the ball. And I do it at practice. We'll run a little 5-on-5 set, and I'll be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, move it. But it's like usually 1, 2, bang, and they're looking and they're moving, and then it's on their teammates to create. So again, something tangible to make sure that they're moving their feet is to put a number on how long they can have the ball, and that creates a lot of fluidity in your offense. Picking an inside-outside picking game is more for the pro guys or the higher guys, and they know to establish the middle of the floor. So I'll gloss over that one. But it's just more for the young guys is your east-west, your north-south stuff, your pick-repicks is something that you want to kind of figure out what's successful at the young age, and again with your personnel. I think the last couple little things I got on offense, and again I could bore you with a whole whack of more in-depth stuff, but I got to kind of sizzle through this stuff to get all my points through on the season. I see I'm already kind of running my mouth a little bit long on the first part. Would be getting over top and getting down the middle is super important. You don't want to play a perimeter game. I call it the hockey lanes. Standing on the outside, not willing to get to the middle of the floor to prime scoring areas. So you got to really encourage your kids, and it falls back on the little things. If, Johnny cuts down the pipe and doesn't get the ball, but he went right down Main Street and he's going to get wallpapered in the middle, or he gets hammered, you got to make sure that you address that. So that's a big part of my offensive philosophy is getting to the dirty areas. The last thing is a 25-second shot clock, meaning that is like where you are on the floor when there's like when you're about to shoot the ball at the end of the 30 or when there's 5 seconds left, that you know that you're tilting the floor to either your bench side if you're changing away from the bench and shut off their transition. The ball's not too high, they can't run it down your throat. So that's a little bit more for the higher levels, but talking about a 25-second shot clock or just floor awareness or floor bounce is nothing that you can't teach at a young age, which is super important, especially when you're playing the Eastern teams that run the reverse changes on you. The next thing that I would talk about is some of the drills that you can run to run your offense, and I'll just sizzle through them real quick, and then I can answer stuff down the road or whenever. But you got your 4-corner drills that I do. I got some patterns that I run offensively that can get the kids doing some motion that I even run up to the pro level that just gets people going. I might not give some of the pro guys them, but the young guys, the minors, I will. 2-on-2s, on ball, off ball are super important. Your 3-on-3s are super important. Your 5-on-5s are really important too. At a minor level, I'll sit here and tell you that I only have 3 offensive plays, but we have a few more than that. But I think at young, it's always have some good go-to stuff to try to get maybe your horse the ball late in the game or something like that. So it's always good to have some of your, some set plays for them. And especially going in provincials, you got to make sure that you got something there. I think just playing free ball, there's a value to it. Some guys like to think, just remember who you are. We're just going to play the way we're going to play. I take a little bit of that philosophy. Absolutely. That's Terry Sanderson. Love him. And he taught me a lot of that stuff, but I do think there's a good hybrid where you're going to have some set plays in there as well. Even at the minor level, definitely junior. There's no question. There's a book for that. Defensively, whatever you decide to do, whether it's a man-to-man system or that matchup pressure defense I talked a little bit about earlier, it's super important that you kind of have some core values to it. I'll just rattle through them again because I see it's already halfway through the presentation. But just say you're playing a man-to-man, I think the 3 Ps are really important. Is your position, your pressure, and your post. So where you're going to put on the pressure. How much pressure you're going to put on, when you're going to put the pressure on, and then being on your post is in your off-ball side sagging in. We talk about parameters. Where on the parameters, meaning where on the floor are you going to go out and pressure someone? Where does the high ball pressure come? Where does the low ball pressure come? Excuse me. And what you're going to do from there. So I think that's important. Shooting lanes, some guys will defend the far post. Some guys will stand on the short side. You have to know how you're going to play in shooting lanes. And we talk about mirroring sticks on defense. These are all stuff that you can teach at the young age. I know all the pro guys know all about it, but mirroring sticks is trying to make sure your lefts are checking your rights. I know you don't have the luxury of it in some centers or some associations, but if someone says, "Most, you're picking an A1 team," at least I want 7 in case one of the, meaning 7 players, 7 rights if I'm short right, or 7 lefts if I'm short lefts. Is if one guy goes down and I feel really bad for the teams that phone me up and say, "Hey man, I got 1 left," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, here's is all I can give you." But try, if you can, is to try to match sticks as best as you can, especially as you get older. I think it's super important. Some people don't think it is. I don't agree. I just think mirroring sticks, being in passing and shooting lanes is super important. So I think that's important when you're picking your teams and having that stuff. I think you need to know what you're going to do in the first 10 seconds of a 30-second clock. Are you coming out of the gate? You're going to pressure up, or you're going to sit back. Your next 10 seconds in the 30, how are you going to play it? You're going to let them swing, or you're going to come out and you're going to be aggressive. And then your last 10 seconds to 5 seconds, we call it red and black in Calgary. I know I'm tipping my hand a bit, but that's what this is all about. Is that you kind of, what you're going to do and when you're going to put the ball pressure on, and you're going to get out and get guys and get on their hands and how you're going to play it. So I think that's really important, especially by midget bantam for sure. You should be knowing a lot of that stuff. Next thing is we live off the cross check. My defensive philosophy, I don't care what system you're playing, you got to live off the cross check. I don't like the guy, sure you want to get out in hands, you do, especially if you got some quick offensive guys, you want to get in their personal space and eliminate a great player by taking away his time and space. But anytime you get a chance to get a good cross check, and I do agree with the fellas last week about the off ball cross check. I don't think there's a lot of place for it. That comes down to just intimidation, big kids, small kids. So, but I do think there is a place in the class for a good, clean, hard ball player initiated cross check. The other thing we talk about is never get beat underneath. That's an ideology that you got to make sure you have. Any defensive system, no one gets beat underneath, especially if you're the crease man, you got no help underneath. And again, over top, you want to channel them down to those hockey lanes. I talked about not wanting to play offensively, that you want to try to dictate to the other teams to play on an offensive hockey lane up and down the alley, so it's easier to defend. I think the other part is important is I talked about it in my isms a little bit earlier, is that your rebound control is making sure you contain your man before you peak, meaning that you got to tie up the guy before you look for the loose ball. So that's something that's super important. You see in minor, you're yelling at the kids, and there's some drills you can do for that stuff, and I could probably give guys that offline. The last thing is your personnel matchups. You know, you're going to get the best kids in Pee Wee. How are you going to defend them? You're going to get the best kids in Bantam. I thought Bantam was a big, huge jump. You get the kids that are hit puberty already, and kids that are not even close yet. So that's a big age group jump. So it's important. You're going to get the big, strong kid. How are you going to defend them? If you're going to say, well, our system will beat your individuality, well, go for it, roll the dice. But I wouldn't want to have a one and done with that philosophy. So make sure that you're addressing some other teams' personnel. Some of the drills that I'll do to work on the defense is the one-on-one stuff. Is I'll do, you know, a lot of guys do with just the shafts. I do that. I think I'm a believer in that, but I'm a real big believer of playing one-on-one defense when you're tired. I think that's super important, you know, game situational stuff. I'll mention probably later, but to practice how you play. You know, you got to practice hard. It's got to be purposeful. I think that's super important. That's one of my big things that we do here in the Ridge and in Calgary and some of the junior teams that I had. You got to run your 2-on-2s, your 3-on-3s on and off the ball, very similar to your offensive stuff, so you can work both together in your lines, in your groups, or however you want to do it. I like the 4-and-4s. Like Bobby Mann always says, you can't hide. You know, you run a 4-and-4 practice. The extra fifth guy can kind of sit in the hole and plug it a little bit, but you run 4-and-4. You know, it really brings up the 2-man games. You can't really slide from the off-ball side because, you know, you just got to worry about your other guys. So 4-and-4s is something we work on a lot. I think it's especially from the defensive perspective, it brings up the communication. It's like guys defending on their island. They don't have those off-ball really sliding over from the 3-man side middle to kind of help if a guy rolls to the middle and stuff like that. And then the 5-on-5s is important. We incorporate that into the benches and the transition stuff, and it's kind of the next thing that I'll talk about is the tranny stuff. Transition systems, where I talk about aces and reverse aces. Aces meaning that you got a group of guys that'll run out your backhand and you have your fastest guys and just call them aces. And reverse aces, I won't tip my hand on too much about that. I wrote on paper, but that's something for a different day maybe. But just knowing what type of transition system that you kind of want to run. You know, you can run a high risk, high reward, balls on the ground and you're gone. Or you can run more, I don't say it's conservative because everyone's got a green light. I always went back and forth with Schneids in Calgary about our transition systems. And, you know, I was accused of being a little bit too conservative. And, you know, obviously I take everybody's, you know, players and everyone I coach is their feedback is super important, kind of come in between. But, you know, we secure the ball before we run a lot of times, meaning that we got to make sure we got possession before we cheat. Obviously, situation time score changes that a little bit because all this is not completely cookie cutter stuff, but it gives you a good idea of kind of how you want to run your transition system. But again, like I said, everyone's got a green light to go. Make sure that if a guy's ahead of you in transition, that you're pushing the ball up the floor. You want to make sure that if a guy's ahead of you, that he's got his head in a swivel. Like I watched a little bit of our novice stuff, and you know, the kids are running up the floor doing a pick and roll drill down the floor, but none of them were looking, over the shoulder. And even though they weren't getting the ball because they weren't ready to pass it up for the levels we were doing, you got to make sure they're looking over the shoulder and they're looking for the ball. So that helps. The first thing you do when you pick up a ball in transition is your head up. It's something that we really preach no matter what system you're running. You can always peel back to your own end, but you need to have your head up, looking up the floor for that opportunity. Everyone's like, hey, well, yelling at the whole rink's yelling for the breakaway. Well, it might not be little Johnny's problem because maybe you haven't repped it and practiced that loose ball you pick out of the corner and your head's not up and you haven't taught them to get the head up first. You can always peel back, like I said earlier. So, and running the floor in numbers is very important. And then stretching the floor is big, meaning that you just can't stop at center or stop at their rag line. You want to get right down to the creases, which holds the defensive guys accountable, meaning that the guys, if they're coming off the bench at the higher levels, or if they're running back in the minors when they're playing, offense, defense change system, that it's super important that the guys are on the creases, because if you're not on the creases, then those defenders just sit in the hole. And I always say one guy checks two, meaning that he checks the guy in the crease because he's way out, or he checks the ball carrier as well. Don't create a good 2-on-1. So it's important they go to the creases, and now that defenseman has to make a decision. Do I give up the guy that's super dangerous on the crease to attack the ball carrier, or do I sit possum and the ball carrier gets a good look at the net? So those little things, no matter what system, those are little key points, little nuggets for you if you don't know already from the transition side, that it's super important that you push in your transition system. And then the next big thing that I got is take what you're given. You got to go. You got to empower the kids. You look at the Eastern guys, and I'll sit and watch the Eastern game. I go, that's a bad look. That's a bad luck. Well, before you spin your head, you're down 6-0. Maybe it wasn't a bad luck, because they just push. And the Whitbees of the days, and Brucey does a heck of his job with his Orangeville kids, and Krug and Shoot. They bring their teams out at the Crosby, and I love watching those guys. Even if we're on the wrong end of the score, they just go. They take chances, and they play lacrosse. They're not going to slow it down. And I always say, play 5-on-5 offense in the blood and the beer. They're going to push. So I think that's important. Take what you're given. And I teach the kids, situation, time, score. I say it a little different than what other people will say their time, situation, score. I always think about the situation first, and then you got your time, and then you got to realize your score. So that stuff is important for us as you get to the higher levels, know when and where to go. How important is your next goal if you're in a 1-goal game, or, how important is if you're up by 4, so that's important as you get a little bit older. Some of the drills that I'll do in transition is we call them 2-man outs. There's variations where 2 rights will break out of their own end. I'll get them on the post. We'll shoot on the goalie. Goalie makes a pass. We hit the deep guy. He'll go take a shot. The trailer will get a pass from a coach. He'll get a shot. Then maybe we'll progress into a pick and roll. Come down or set a seal maybe, and the ball carrier will carry over and shoot that one, and then that guy will slide to the middle, get a ball from the coach. I see a guy do 2-man outs too many times where the guy will run 200 feet, make a pass to the breakaway guy, and then just jog it in, which is, to me, it's a waste. Like the guy's going to run 200 feet after a pass. You got to give him a look at the net. The other variation, like I said earlier, we'll run a pick and roll off of that. We'll just run a seal. So there's a lot of different variations. Maybe we'll do the 2-man out, and then we'll run back to the same end as a transition back. We call it reverse transition, stopping the guys running the other way. That works well. The 3-on-2s and the 2-on-1 build-up drills is really good for transition. I incorporate, anyone's been around me knows I incorporate the benches into that. Guys sprinting to the door. Dr. Dave Locke, changes. That was, everyone thought, what's Lockie talking about? No, Lockie's bang on, man. And we tie the benches into a lot of our transition drills that we do. Our build-up stuff, we start with the 2-on-1s, and we build up to the 3-on-2s, the 4-on-3s. Blaine talked about it, to the 5-on-4s. And you have the whistles in there. If you don't like what you see and you back it up. I don't very often in practice do I let a bad play slide by, and that's what you're there for, is to make sure you're correcting the kids and doing things, so you don't turn a blind eye on a lot of that stuff. It's making sure you're doing it the right way, and that's where you're doing your proper stuff. Again, everything has got to be high tempo and done at game speed, especially when you're doing your transition stuff. You want to get the ball up the floor real quick. And a lot of the guys the big thing I got written down here is to stay wide in transition. Get to the wall, stretch the floor, stay wide, so the guys can make that pass to where you're going, not where you are. And especially if you're split the middle of the floor, you can throw it over your head or throw it to the middle, and you'll catch it. And the next thing you know, you'll be on the wrong side of the floor with a look. So we always talk about attacking east-west across the crease. I think that's super important as well. So when you stay wide, you have the ability to do that. Next thing I would talk about is super important is your special teams, is your power play and your man short. We spend a lot of time on that in practice, and we spend a lot of time on that in practice. It's something that we really work on, especially at the pro level. But even with the minors, you might get into that 4-4, 5-5 game, and your power play is going to be huge. If you can go 50% on the power play, and I'm not saying you have to put numbers on it as a young team, but the year we won the championship in Calgary, our special teams was absolutely outstanding on both ends of the ball. So I put a lot of time in that, a lot of time on my power play, a lot of time on my man short. Just some philosophies. Like, everyone can have different philosophies, but I do have systematic rules that I'll use, and I'll just throw out some things. Again, it's for little things. If you like it, you take it. If you don't, my neighbor taught me, throw it in the garbage can if you don't like it. So I think what's big for me is on the power play. We talked about 2 to 3 seconds with the ball offensively, 5-on-5. On the power play, I'm 1 to 2 seconds with the ball. You're making sure you're moving the ball, and then what are you doing? Are you moving your feet? You got to have some motion. On your power play, I don't think about standing around and just passing it. I have some certain things that I do. Is there's a combination that I run some structure, and I'll run some free ball. So when do you run structure? When you don't run structure? When do you free ball? That'll be up to the individual coach of how he likes to do some things. What do you do when you skip a pass? I have some systematic rules that we put in place when there's skips, what guys need to do. And again, that comes down to some things tangible. You can say, oh, you got to move, you got to cut the middle. Well, especially at the young age, it's nice to say, hey, if your ball goes from here to there, then what are you doing? And they'll know, because that's kind of a rule. So again, it's something tangible the kids can jump on and say, yeah, man, he said when the ball goes from this spot to that spot, I got to be doing that. And that really helps. And instead of just yelling at them, move, cut, you know, that's not our job as coaches. We got to make sure we give the kids the best opportunity to succeed. I talk about, you know, set pieces. You know, I'm going to lie to you a little bit, you know, 3 maybe, Pee-wee, we had more than that, but you don't want to overload your kids. We had anywhere from 5 to 10 potentially. Again, talk about your personnel. You got to know, you know, we had certain guys at pro level, we can run a ton. There's certain guys that we couldn't run a ton. But with the minors, you got to find that little sweet spot. Don't say, well, you know, the JDF guy runs 10 plays on the power play. Well, it doesn't matter. The JDF guy's running 25%, fill his boots, you know. So, you know, it's important. You got to find your spot as a coach, and as your personnel is super important too in that. You got to make sure you got different variations. We'll run a box and 1. You got to make sure you're practicing for your 4-on-3s. And again, I'm rattling through all this stuff, but this is all this stuff that I'm talking about. We're doing throughout the year so that we're ready for the provincials when the end of the year comes around. So your 4-on-3s are super important. You got to be able to play against a box and a diamond. You got to make sure that you're prepared for that. You would have, even though if your short man doesn't play a diamond, and you know, a lot of people are gonna throw something different at you come provincial time. So you got to make sure you're ready. I'll speed her up, Brucey. I see it's quarter after. Your man short, you got to make a decision if you're running your diamond or a box. We always had both. Make sure that we had something different if we had to throw something at somebody. How you're going to play your shooting lanes. Some guys like to have, you know, I know Levy likes a guy on the short side post. I like to play on the far side post, and your back on the short man. You got to figure that stuff out. It's super important. What are you going to do with the ball behind the net? It's not so important in minor, but it is within the NLL. How you're going to play that? What's your plan with that happening? Everyone's got to be on the same page. Guys will try to bang it off the goalie's back from behind in minor. So how are you going to play it? What you're going to do? You know, we're making sure we're covering that stuff. Your man short, you got to have some special jumps, meaning when the ball hits the corner, you're going to jump it, or pass counts, meaning how many passes are you going to jump a ball as a personnel. That stuff's important. You're going to lock a guy off. We, believe it or not, guys, we go through all of that stuff before we hit provincial, so we're ready and we can throw something at them. How are you going to defend a box in 1? You know, is Gilly going to keep playing the same thing over again and over again? Probably will, so that's pretty easy. You know, you run your 4-on-3 stuff. You got to practice against that stuff because it's important. You're going to go 2 up, 1 back. You can go 1 up, 2 back. It's always good to have different looks. Again, this is a lot that I'm throwing at the minor guys, but you know, I'm going 13 and over. Some of the junior guys can maybe get some of that stuff, and I think that's important. Just been touching on everything. The drills that I'll do for the special teams will be, you know, I'll just do, you know, break a power play 1, power play 2 on one bench, short man 1 and 2 on the other. We'll come off the benches. I'll even incorporate my ball raggers into that so that we'll play full on, like you're playing a full special team thing. Right in the middle of a 5-on-5 set or a shanty set, I heard Eddie say it. We do the same thing. We'll blow the whistle and I'll say power 1 against short 1, let's go. And they got to get out and they got to play their reps, and then we'll go short 1 against short 2, and we got to get the reps in. So you do it any time of practice. It changes things up and it makes it more game situational stuff, and it's more purposeful. And again, like I said earlier, big believer in practice how you play. The other thing is that I'll do on the power play stuff is I'll put numbers on it, how many reps you want to do. You sit there and put a stopwatch on and you say, or say, I'm going to go 5 minutes, but, you know, I try to put some certain amount of reps that you're going to go each one so that you can kind of quantify how it's going. Otherwise, the short man's like, oh, good job, coach. You're 1 for 5 and this is getting boring. You're going to keep going until you score. So it's always good to have that stuff out there. Sometimes I use clock too. That's good to incorporate and actually have like a full 2-minute penalty and make it a bit of a competition like Blaine talked about. There's lots of ways to do it. And it makes a big difference. That's more in the higher levels. Your face-offs, I'll touch on those. We'll go through the face-offs before we hit provincials. Absolutely. We'll have your 2-2 look, 2-0, 2D. We'll go 3 back. What's your philosophy? I know shooter, Josh Anderson, he'll put a guy way back on his line. He's like, there's absolutely no chance we're getting scored on off the draw. And as we all know, those are momentum shifters, or even can change the complex of a game if someone scores 1 and then gets 1 off the draw right away. So you got to know your system and how you're going to play on your face-offs. It's really important that you do that. There's some set pieces you can run off of that to get chances off your face-off team. We run some special stuff in minor, and you can incorporate your benches with that. You have the 4, if you have a real good draw guy, maybe you put 4 up and you challenge the other team. So we'll do it in groups. We'll have, red, white, and blue we do in the Ridge here. So the red will play against the whites, and King's Court, and they'll battle hard. And right before the provincials, we're going, and the kids they're jacked up to get some aggression out, but possession is huge. I said it, my coaching philosophy is about loose balls. Possession is really, really big for me. So, that's important. You know what you're doing off your face-offs, son. That's big. Next thing would be your ball raggers. I mentioned it briefly, just practicing with your ball raggers against your power play, stuff like that on your against your power play defense. It's important. You got to have some set plays for that. We have a couple of them. Everyone talks about, Friggy talks about the egg beater, which is just pass across and cut through the middle, and the crease guy cycles up. It's not so much now. Back in the day, that was something that was important. But now you get the 30-second shot clock in there. You're not ragging the full 2 minutes. So we're looking to go, I don't like to concede. That's my philosophy. I'm not going to roll the ball in the corner. I'm going to try to I'm going to look for a reset. There's some things we design that we can get resets off of, or we're going to try to score goals. You don't want to sit there. Obviously, if you can get a reset on that, that's huge. So we practice things, believe it or not, that can get us resets. Set plays, not just to score, but to get the ball so we can take a bite out of other teams' power plays. I think it's also important that you know who you're playing and how they defend things. Some guys will sit a guy in the hole. Some guys will come out and play or aggressive. So scouting your opponent on that is important, how you can find yourself some short man goals. And then I'll just rattle through the next little quick things, and I'll get on to the last part. Is your 5-on-6 defense, how you're going to play when they pull their goalie. You're going to have special jumps. It's going to be, you're going to lock a guy off, or you're going to jump and you're going to release a guy and try to just throw off their cadence of their set play. Is you're going to fire off of it? Is it timed? Is it personnel controlled? That's important. And then you obviously going to make sure you have your own 6-on-5 plays. We got 3 to 4 of them is pretty good. I call power play default, knowing like if we have a set play that you're going to run. If you're a delayed penalty, someone takes a penalty and they're all running back in the house and you're pulling your goalie to have that free possession. We like to have something to go to on that, because not a lot of time that you can have. You get your personnel out there. So just make sure you kind of got something in your back pocket that you can go to that's not personnel controlled, but systematic, meaning that you can go to a play. So I think I see a lot of coaches go, they have no idea, and they piss away that, they mess that last little bit of the 30-second clock. It's super important that you know your next one, and we've watched teams have different philosophies. Is trying to get the ball back late in the game, which is your press and press break, I call it. So you want to be, we have about 2 or 3 plays that we like to run in Calgary. And I used to run with my minors, we'd have 1 or 2. It all depends on how we'd run it. Is that you want to break, if you're up a goal 5-4 late in the provincial game, and they, you call a timeout to keep possession, and they're going to pull their goalie to press you, you got to have a set play for that. We practice that throughout the year. I'll even, I don't show up, just do it right in July. We make sure we get a good bite into it early in May, in case we need it at the Wingrove or something like that, or the guys need it at the Berman. You make sure you want to have something, and I'll have 2 of them in my back pocket, and I'll elaborate why later. And then you want to be able to get the ball back. It's very, very important that you want to be able to have a play that you want to be able to press and get the ball back in case, you're down by 1 and you got to get it. And I think a different day is clock management. I see guys call timeouts at wrong times. I think that's a whole different session, and I wouldn't tip my hand too much, but I think it's important how you keep your timeout and when you spend it. I see guys, me and Brucey make jokes about not having your timeout. So at opportune time. So it's important you have your game management stuff, especially working on that stuff. So you want to talk to your players, as when you're working on that, guys. Coaches will call the time. It'll come from the bench. I'll know when you need it, and it's got to come from the floor. I get it, but I think that stuff's really, really important. You'll get the coach that'll yell at the poor kid, "Why do you call a timeout?" "Well, you never told me, coach." "Well, it's got to come from the floor." Really, I don't. I'm 12. So, all that little stuff gets touched on in our group. We have meetings, and we're in hotel rooms, and Cogsy gets us the meeting room, and we make sure we're all tight and all that stuff. So anyway, even the 5-on-4 stuff, like it could be 4-on-4, and then they call a timeout, they pull their goalie. How are you going to play 5-on-4? And that happened to us in San Diego in the pros. But yeah, we practiced it, how we were going to attack when we only had 4 guys on the floor, and we were able to. I don't pull my goalie. That's just my personal philosophy. To try to make it 5-on-5, but we were prepared. We ran the play and we ran the game out. So and maybe if we hadn't practiced that the night before, maybe we would have panicked, not seen a situation. So again, my coaching philosophy, and you hear it from Wayne Gretzky, and you hear it from all the guys: fail to prepare, be prepared to fail. I'm a huge guy. I probably get accused of overloading kids. Yeah, maybe, but it's just how you present it and when you present it, and then you figure out what's important, what works for you. Again, here's the key to success. I know I got 9 minutes, Bruce. I can rattle through these real quick. if you want, or you can start shooting some stuff. But these were kind of, I think, important points. What do you think?
Go through it, and then we'll get to the Q&A at the end. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so the important keys to success is, I guess I mentioned it before, I talk about purposeful practice. You got to practice how you play. It's very, very important that you do that. And I talked about some of the things that you can do. You know, practice is not punching the clock. You're not walking out there 120 hours of practice and you did nothing. So again, I hope I gave you some structure on what you want to look at in your practice and how you kind of want to look at it. Next thing is talking about being prepared is do your homework. You know, you go to the rinks, you watch other teams. I try to get my teams to go watch other teams, and you know, it's important that you scout your opponent. I'm a huge video guy. I'm a huge scouting report guy. It's just, you got to be prepared for what they do. And, you know, I take my kids to games and we're not in the stands cheering for somebody. We're not making fun of everybody. You're acting, it's a business. You're there, business trip for our kids, and we're watching and we're showing respect for the teams that are on the floor, but we're there looking and we're watching and we're trying to see what we can do and pick up some things. So, you know, I have a lot of coaches will go, next thing you know, they'll be upstairs having a popcorn and a Coke and not watching when there's a huge game on the other side of the rink. And, you know, smart guys in the Ridge will make sure that, Coquitlam and JDF are not playing each other when there's an opportunity, when we're playing someone else, that we're going to get a good look at you. So there's little tricks that teams do so that you can scout games or send your video guys in to get your extra film to make sure you have a look at guys. So I think all that stuff is super important. The other side of it is don't show your hand too early. Like, you know, you go to the Trevor Wingrove or the Berman tournament in Ontario or the big ones in Alberta, like, yeah, it's great to win in April and run around with your trophy. And I know you're going to say, well, you know, it's great for the kids, but, you know, I'm kind of talking about what you're really focusing on is your provincials. I'm still talking about development. I'm still saying everyone can still have a great time, but I'm just saying, like, you don't want to show too much. You're obviously, you're playing a window, you know, you're trying to be successful. You're trying to grow as a team. You're trying to learn from your mistakes. You're trying to get better. But you know, what you show in April is probably not what you want to show in July. And the flip side of it, there's a lot of guys that'll show you what they're going to do in July and April. So take advantage of it. The next key point to success is be in shape. We really push our kids, you know, fitness. The pros are a little different. You trust your guys, and they're always in shape on their own. But you know, with the minor kids, we really run and we cut it off at a certain time, but we're making sure we're fit. If you want to be an athletic transition team, well, if you're not in shape, you can't. So making sure your team is fit and you're not doing too much, but you're able to be conducive to the systems you want to run because you're in shape. I've already talked about hiding your best for last. I think it's important that you're unpredictable. You got to just make sure you're prepared be prepared to be unprepared or uncomfortable at times. I know it's hard to do, but I think little things is you can change it up, and that meaning when you get to the provincials, it's something different. And here's a couple little different things that we can do is, like, if you run just a regular, you know, offense defense change, you can run a 3-2 system. You can run your reverse line changes, something that we've done in the past. So we can go in our back pocket and we'll come out with somebody and they've never seen it before. And by the time they figure it out, it's too late. We've beaten them, and especially in a semifinal or a final. You can go from a man-to-man defense to a zone or matchup pressure defense, or you can have more of a pressure defense, doubling the ball. So that's important. You got your goalie sneaks and your fake sneaks and what you can run off of that. I run a lot of set pieces off of that stuff. Everyone goes back into the house and you sting them with something else. Like, we won't have time to show you what that is, but it's something that you could probably figure out. Maybe you're going to run a full court press on them. You're going to run a trap. You haven't run it all year, but you can run that in the provincials. Or you know, if you do big on you, want to win in April, then fill your boots, and maybe we have something that you show them that's a little bit different, but there's something for you. You know, maybe late in the game, I know that, yeah, people might not like it, but if someone can punch you in the chin, you can punch them in the chin and you go 4-4 and you're tied, or you're down a goal, I should say. Now you can pull your goalie and go 5-on-4. Referees might not like it, but that's a little nugget that you can probably use, and then give you an opportunity to pull your goalie, go 5-on-4 in a power play rather than try to go with the kids. It's tough to score 6-on-5. It really is. Cheat out your back end a little bit, meaning that you can just fire a guy up the floor. As soon as they wind up the shoot, he takes off and you put a box in behind him and he cheats, and everyone on the floor knows what you're going to do, and you're looking for that breakaway. Stevie Toll knows what I'm talking about. The other thing is maybe you only throw 4 guys on the floor and everyone's yelling, you're missing a guy, you're missing a guy. And everyone's yelling, we're missing a guy. Well, we're not really. And then they're looking to attack you. They don't know what to do. The other team goes, yeah, go to the net. And all of a sudden, you know, you flip your Dane Dobie out the front door and the ball goes the other way. And I mean it more for the minor level. So you fake like you don't have enough out there. You know, the seagull, you hide them on the boards. I don't like that. It's kind of on the pads and stuff. I think that's garbage. It'd be a little bit, you know, keep the guy on the bench a little bit, kind of trick him a little bit. You can maybe say that's garbage, but it'll get you a look at the right time, and a goal's a goal in a big game. Yeah, I've done the Mighty Duck stuff in the Minto Cup, you know, on the power play. You know, everyone huddles together and they dump it in one stick and we come out, we scored on it, even though we didn't win the game. But little things like that at minor. I know JT did it in Buffalo years ago, but that's just something you can try. You kind of forget about that stuff, but it'll work here and there. Bench sneaks on the man short. I won't get into it, but the guys that play junior and COQ with me know what you can do on that and set some things up. So there's always those little things. Again, the keys to success, we always say loose balls in the ridge. Loose balls win games. I've talked about how important possession is and those loose ball battles and how important they are and how much emphasis you put on those. So again, the little things are the big things, and guys are going to the corners and coming 1-on-3 loose balls. And I look back at my provincial and my national championship teams, and we were always real tight in our loose balls. The next big thing, key to success, is discipline. Super important. You know, the guy comes down our end and tries to punch us in the chin, and it's a 4-on-4. You're not getting anything out of us. You know, turning the other cheek, trying to keep the temperature of the game down. I think our key to success in Buffalo was, in the championship we won, was keeping the temperature down. You know, they had the Durstons of the world that wanted to be relevant in the game. We didn't let them be relevant. We played. It didn't matter what you did or what you said. We weren't going to react. I think discipline is super important at a minor level. And, you know, it happens during the year, and you got to make that a big deal. If a guy goes off his rocker and costs the team, there's some consequences to that. And conversely, if the guy takes someone on the chin, or the guy, someone midget jumps him and punches him in the head, he takes it and we win the game, that's got to be celebrated too. So, you know, discipline is super important. Guys talked about the 5-minute segments in the process. When we get to the pro level, I'm huge on that. Even in the midgets, even in the bantams, like the 5-minute segments, breaking it down in the 20-minute periods is super important. Try to win those little ones, little individual battles within the 5 minutes, and celebrating them, making them important is really important. And as you get older, refocusing, I'm self-talk stuff. You know, I know Danny Dawson's big on that. And, you know, I was when I was a player. I am as a coach. Dr. David Cox, I didn't mention him, but I'm a big fan of Dr. David Cox and the stuff that he taught me as a player. I carry on as a coach, is constantly refocusing. And I'll talk about composure and resiliency. You know, you can't be a resilient team if you're not a composed team. It all ties in, and I had a bit of a spiel how you can be successful in that, but I won't get into that today. And then I think the last thing that I'll talk about with the keys to success is 1 minute, is wanting to win and willing to win. Everyone wants to put their hand up and say, yeah, I want to win, coach, I want to win. Well, you know what? You're standing with your butt on the boards with a Home Depot tattooed to your butt, because you don't want to go to the middle of the floor. So I'm not sure. I know you want to, Johnny, but I don't think you're willing to. So we really preach in the Ridge and our teams about being willing to win, meaning that you want to go down the middle of the floor. You'll take a cross check in the teeth to open it up for a teammate. You'll do whatever it takes to be successful within the parameters of the game. But you'll prove to your teammates that you're willing to win. So there's a difference for me. So you tie all that stuff in, and I think I rambled for 59 minutes, and that's kind of my keys to success. Hopefully I gave you some stuff. Some stuff the guys probably know, but maybe records and you can play it back again, because I know I'll go too quick. I pinned a few coffees.
Well, as per usual, just a fountain of information. I loved earlier in the week you said you're giving us fluff, and you just went an hour and there was absolutely no fluff in there. It might be fluff to you, but when I think of the average coach and stuff, there was just so many things there to unpackage, and I can't wait to upload the YouTube for everybody to really go through it. And we've had some people that wanted to go through that. But on that note, I wrote down a whole bunch of things, and I've been very fortunate, to be able to have these discussions with you over the years. But some of the things that I want to maybe touch on a little bit. You mentioned about that situation time score, and I know when we were in Calgary, Bobby McMahon called it time score situation, and you kind of rejigged it to your own thing. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what that actually means and why you go the way that you do.
Well, it's some guys, I think it's a basketball thing or a football thing, and that's for Bobby. Bobby and I've had many debates, and we just agree to disagree. But I would look at it like I'm coming out the front door, and as soon as I get out there, I want, what's the situation am I in? Am I a 5-on-5 offense? Is it 4-on-4? Is it a transition look that I'm coming off the bench for? So when I step on the floor, I want to understand the situation that I'm going to be in first thing when I get out there. Then I got to kind of know, okay, how much time? And I look at it like the 30-second clock. How much time's in the 30? How much time's in the game clock? Yeah, I'm on the bench and I'll understand, but the kids might not be looking that far ahead. So when I get out there, it's like, okay, it's a transition look. Okay, it's early in the 30. You know what? It's late in the game. I don't know if I want to take that look. Maybe I want to pull it out. So that's why I kind of tie in the situation and then the time, and then the score is important. Meaning, like, say, you know, if it's 5-4 and it's a tight game, you know, do I want to force that one? Or let's say conversely, I'm up by 4 goals. You know, how important is, you know, I'm up 10-6. How important is the 11th goal? Really, is it that important? I force it in transition, it goes back the other way. Next thing you know, it's not 11-6. It's, you know, it's 10-7, and now they're creeping back to get one off the draw, and it's 10-8. You know, where you could have held that. You know, where it's a bit tighter of a game maybe, or you're down by 1, you want to go. So the score always plays into it. So I always say situation, time, score. I've been saying that since I've been coaching junior in Burnaby, and, you know, Bobby goes the other way, and you can argue that way. But that's kind of what my thing is, that once you get on the floor, you have to recognize your situation. Then your 30-second clock is tied into your game clock as far as time, and then the score ties into it too. So you can't go wrong lumping it either way. All 3 scenarios. It's just the key points are that situation, time, score.
Well, I think, you know, with that too is, you know, educating your players on those, right? Like that's the key of it. Like, you know, as coaches, we can understand what those things are, but, you know, how do we teach our players to understand what those elements are and when one applies over the other and all that, right? So, you know, again, that's just something that I think is an interesting discussion, and I think if we have that discussion, you know, we can generate a lot of great conversations on the right way to do things at certain times, or, you know, within a game. You know, another thing you know, just touching on, you talked about composure and, you know, and I think, you know, one thing that, you know, just from watching you and knowing you, you know, I think your composure over the last few years has changed. And, you know, one thing that I always remember though, when, you know, coaching with you was, you know, there might be a million things going on, but don't worry, we're going to make that adjustment, right? You always had that confidence. And I think that's one of those things that is composure, and that just was a way of settling the players. Okay, so it might not be going our way, but, you know, we're gonna find a strategy to get that. And I think that's, you know, something that, you know, how do you you know, instill that confidence, and how do you work on that emotional control? Because sometimes in a lacrosse game, momentum shifts quick, you know. So just maybe touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, Bruce, yeah, I think that's preparation. You know, when you're prepared for all those different scenarios and you've done it before, it breeds that, you know, I think they say like preparation is some about preparation being a byproduct of confidence. It's David Cox taught us that way back. So like if you're confident because you've practiced it, because you're prepared for it, the situation arises, you've done it before. And I just have an ability, like I don't need to look up at the Jumbotron. Well, I will, obviously I don't mean that, but I don't need to look up the Jumbotron, or I don't have to wait till Tuesday to see what they did in the 12-minute mark of the 4th quarter, because I see it as it happens. So that is important by you being composed, that there's not a million things that you're worried about. What's important, what can you control? Like I can't control what the other team's trying to do on their bench or the referee. Those are the little things that you just kind of leave away and you focus on your team. And you know, agree. Early in my coaching career, I'd be all over the map, yelling and screaming and yelling at the ref and missing stuff. And, you know, even up in that championship, you know, it's nice. The players, Delp said to me, he goes, "Mouse, like, what's going on? You're losing." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I got to reel myself back." But just that composure, and you're the leader, you're the guy that they're looking at. Even in the pros, they're looking at you, and especially the kids. Like if you're going off like a yo-yo, man, that you can't expect them to have composure. So I just think being prepared, understanding your opponent, being through situations because you've practiced that is super important. And then, you know, obviously, you know, just instilling confidence at the pro level with your leaders. Those men always make sure that they have everybody's back, and having a guy like Dobes on your team makes a big difference too. So I think the resiliency and the composure is tied together.
Hey, Curt, I just have a quick question here. So you're going to push kids, obviously, and with your coaching record, and in minor, I'm really looking at here, out of their comfort zone, which for a lot of parents, that can be really difficult for them to see and be a part of. I think even, you know, coaching over the last 20 plus years and then being a teacher before, I can see parents really protect their kids now more than I've ever seen. What's your initial parent meeting meeting in bantam or midget look like? And how do you get the message across to the parents to trust you to get their kids through that next level, which means, of course, you're going to push them into an uncomfortable zone a lot of times?
Well, I'll be honest, like people have said it before, and I know people that know me, there's no conceit in what I do, man. I'm all about the game and all about the team and team successes. It helps who you are. It does. Like it does help that you have a bit of pedigree when it comes to coaching and where you come from. So, some guys will be, and I want to say that because some guys go, oh, well, I can't get away with that. Or, that does play in it for me. But I think, again, honesty is the best policy. And, it's the Mark Twain. You never have to remember the truth. If you're honest and straight up in that beginning of that meeting with the parents, you look them in the eyes. And again, the people that know me know that I can get emotional. And I mean, like I coach from my heart. And I'll talk about kids that I've had before. I'll talk about our teams, and I'll talk about Big Al, man. Like I get emotional when I talk about the kids. And so when I talk to the parents, I speak from my heart, and I explain to them, like, you can trust me with your kids. You can trust me with what we're doing. If your kid is not happy and he's not feeling good about it, I want your son going home feeling good about what he did that day. And if he's not, I want to know about it. I don't want you to bury it. Oh, don't worry, it'll go the next time. We'll wait. Coach will figure it out. You know what? Sometimes I'll miss it. I'm human. I'll miss something that I think is nothing. And the little guy will be like, man, he's in tears. I don't want that at all. So I tell the parents, I'm on the other way. I'm like, come and talk to me. Like, I'm not going to answer your email, but you could phone me or you pick me up before practice. I'll definitely have a conversation with whatever you want to do, because I don't want Johnny upset. That's the last thing I want to do. I go, yeah, we tie it all into being successful of what you guys have asked me to talk about, and I am. But people that know me inside know I care so much about the kids and them as young men, and coming and then learning the game and understanding the game. It goes way beyond the game. The life lessons that we're teaching with our teams in the Ridge and over the years is making these people better people away from the game. So I just be honest with the parents. I got 2 kids, and I just be straight up and say, this is what we're going to do. And if there's a problem, please come and talk to me. I joked about it earlier about get your ducks in a row when it comes down to your X's and O's. Yeah, you better be sharp if you're going to open up that can. But what we're talking about, Russ, is how kids, what they feel and how they feel about going away. And that's why it's in my coaching philosophy. You want them feeling good, and I want you as a parent group to come and talk to me about it. And over the years, I haven't had too many because I've had a lot of experience with different situations with kids. And again, you go to the bottom up, and all of a sudden the parents are like, wow, man, like he just spent an hour with the 3 bottom kids, and one of them are mine. Unreal. Like, it's all that little stuff. And I don't run into a lot of problems. Like, yeah, I've had my problems, I slipped up here. We all have, right? We know that. But to answer your question is, I just be honest and transparent, and I cover all my bases at the parents, and I have an open door philosophy, and they can just read it in my face that I care about their kids. You can't fake being genuine. You can't.
On that note too, one of the things I wrote down right away was, you talked about little successes, right? And, certainly, I think that's, the best coaches have that, they understand that, your role is this. And when you do that, we're going to celebrate that. And I think that's something that, just kind of talking to that same point, right? Those bottom 2 or 3 people, here's what we need you to do, right? Is, we need you to go and get a loose ball. And when that happens, it might not be, the most challenging thing for a lot of kids, but that's a key thing to make us successful, and also to for you to have value in the team. So I just thought that was something that was just a huge point that I think a lot of coaches kind of gloss over. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit more on that too, though. Like where are some of those little successes above and beyond maybe what I just talked about, the loose ball or whatever it is.
Well, like I talk about like the most important thing being a team. Like to me, that's everything. Like I love the Orangeville guys. I love them, man. I spent years in playing in Rochester in the pros, and I belly up to a lot of the Eastern guys, and Terry and Troy and Bobby. Like those guys taught me so much about team, and I've always felt that way. And I've always had parents that have like stayed out of it with my coaches and let the coaches coach, players play. And we've always done that in our house. And I teach my kids the same way and trust the coaches. And with that being said, that if they're trusting me as their coach, And that's my philosophy, that I got to make sure that everyone feels a part of the team. And I think that's a way to have those little successes and little like the changes coming on and off the floor hard. That's something that you can control, and every kid can do that. And that's a conscious choice. If someone, well, you're coming harder to the bench. Yeah, next time. Well, you made a decision not to come hard to the bench. What do you mean next time? Like, it should be every time. And so, there's going to be kids that won't even get a goal, even though they're playing on the midget A1 team. Maybe they'll get 1 or 2 if you're setting them up, but you just got to make those little things big things. And it's the changes, it's the loose balls, it's setting a pick for a guy. The guy got to over top, or like the guy who gets his head taken off, man. I think I want to cry on the bench that he cares so much for his team to do that, man. Like, it's just like, it's just what it's all about. And you just talk to them about it, and they're like, and then the mom's like, oh, are you okay? And he's like, Mom, I'm fine, man. Did you see Johnny just scored after I got hit? And this is like, those are the things that are so important that you got to bring. You got to make sure that you're touching on them with the kids, and then they just feel it. And then I do my teammates. I really go to but there's always kids that everyone looks up to, especially in Pee Wee. There's going to be someone that's the best player, and what they say. And if you say, well, you're no good, that's why I say no laughing, no joking, no belittling, because that thing from your captain of the Pee Wee team to your 15th kid is going to scar them. It's going to hurt them. So, like, I tell my kids, my 12-year-olds, I said, go over and tell Big Al, good job at field practice, or go over and tell him what a great job that he did. And it comes from the peers. It comes from the young kids. And you're not too young to do it. I do it when you're 9. I send my better kids over to my kids that are developing and telling them what a great job. And we make, actually, Jonah scores his first goal, and we're coming off the bench, and we're making such a massive deal. Now, Jonah feels a bit more a part of it. So it's not always the little thing you do. It's kind of the situation that it's in, but it's how you celebrate it as a coach, how you get the teammates to celebrate it, and then the kids just end up caring more. And that's a culture that you're creating within your team. And all that stuff is tied in by those little things. And then you've created a real tight team. And it's tough to beat, to beat a real tight team. We know that.
We have a question in the chat. So, what do you look for in choosing team leaders at the minor level? What attributes do you value the highest?
Oh, okay. Well, since I said I wouldn't cheat you, well, I'll just be honest. Like, what I look for, obviously, there's going to be the kids that are your best players. Everyone's like, well, that's a captain. He scored the most goals, or it's like the coach's kid. He's a captain because he's the coach's kid. I didn't put a C on my younger boy my older boy, just because, even though he got voted it, I didn't give it to him just because I didn't feel that that's the way it was going to be. And you also look at when you're giving out letters, what we do is we vote. So the kids vote. And they all put their thing in, and well, we mark the ballots. I'll tip my hand. We mark them because I want to know what the kids say. I know Cogs is on here going, you tipped our hand, but we mark them, and so that we know. You want to know what the other kids think. So before you hand out that C and those A's, you know what all the players on the team think of the teammates. And then the clicks, that guy voted for, oh, really? And some guys throw their votes away, man. They throw them away because they want to be the captain. Well, that tells me something. I've had that happen. And that teaches you character, because we talk about character, being that when something happens when no one else is looking, or something, when do you think no one's looking, how are you going to react? That tells you everything. And those little things will tell you. So now you have the pulse of the team. The coaches know what the leaders are like on the team, and who they see in the room, and who treats, you laugh at the guy and you make a bad name. Well, that guy, yeah, he's your 50 goal scorer, but he treated Johnny like a piece of garbage. I don't like that. And you're not going to get to see on my team. So the players got to get some input. You understand the pulse of your room. And I don't do it right away. We don't come out of the first day of training camp or the first practice, say you're the C's or the A's. I wait. I rotate my A. I just give out A's. I'll rotate A's throughout the year. So early in the year before cheering, I don't even think we put a C out there, just A's. Everyone gets a chance to wear it. And then we decide how you did it. And then it ties in if they talk well to the referees. Well, I know you're not supposed to go over there, some of your refs, but that little things tie in, understand the knowledge of the game. So all those little things, it's not just a really easy decision. You take time and you do, there's no rush. Don't put a deadline on your A's and your C's. I've had teams where I didn't even give out a C. We just went with A's. Didn't have a C on the team because you know what, we didn't have a guy that we thought was going to be a C or was more deserving than the next guy. And we had 3 A's. So there's no perfect science to it, but you have to understand the pulse of your team and understand how your players treat each other in the room is important.
Awesome. Russ, you got anything?
No, I think it's great, Curt. Like every week on these sessions, we've had new messages, but one of the underlying themes, I think, from everybody, and it's really good for me to hear it from the high levels and all the coaches on here, is you can't fake caring, right? It's obviously you care about the kids. Parents will give you a little bit of leeway to help their kids if they know you care. And I'm a true believer in my experiences in life that if somebody actually cares within minutes of having that first interaction. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. It's been a great session to just kind of hear your passion. The X's and O's are always great, but to hear that maybe one of the things you do differently than a lot of people is you get more out of them because you care, right? And I think that's kind of a great message. And I applaud you for that. I think it's obviously a good contributor to your success, outside of the secret notes in the back of that binder you had.
On that note, certainly, you started off the session talking about, a lot of the people that, obviously played a big impact in it. And I think, for me, this is an opportunity to share that same message on the other side of it, right? I don't think that, I've been extremely fortunate to have been around you and a lot of the same people that you mentioned on the call tonight. And, I know you could probably talk for another 3 hours if we wanted to. And, we've been over an hour and, again, just so many, I said to Russ kind of in a text that, there's just nugget after nugget of knowledge. And I think a lot of people, maybe, sometimes don't understand, this stuff, but hopefully, we're going to share this. And again, I know it might seem like second nature to you, but, if you were somebody that's really wanting to get better at the game, I think there was just so much knowledge shared tonight. And we really do appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge, but most importantly, like Russ said, sharing your passion and sharing your enthusiasm for the game. I really do think that we're very lucky to have you here tonight. So we want to thank you, and as always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate, like I said earlier, I really appreciate what you guys did, and thanks for all the kind words, Brucey, and keep up the great work, guys. Keep growing our game. Love it.
And before we jump off here, again, we'd like to thank Epic Lacrosse. They've been sponsoring it, so we'll send out some nice little garb for you guys, Curt and Blaine. And next week, we got another couple great sessions. We have Leslie Hawk coming on, women's field, the game of lacrosse. We have all these different sectors, but women's field is a game that I really had no interaction with until probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And now have realized how much transition knowledge I can pick up from watching that game, how man-to-man sound it has to be. It's quite an amazing game to watch and to pick up tips for men's field, box, whatever sector. And then we have the Hill Academy coming on right after. I've been informed that Riley O'Connor and Brody Merrill are going to be on in that session talking about offense and defense and the hybrid lacrosse. How do we take these box proficient players, put them onto the field without turning them into American robotic players and have success? And I think, you're talking to a couple people there. I think they both went to Georgetown and have had a lot of success. So again, next week we've got great session. Again, Curt, thanks. Bruce, I'll give you the last word.
No, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. 2 great sessions. Thanks to Curt and Blaine, and look forward to next week. So thanks again for everybody for tuning in. Have a great night.
Thanks.